Welcome, everyone. This is the second episode of the Million Vegan Grandmothers podcast. And I'm so honored to have my teacher, my mentor, my guru, Dr. Gabriel Cousens, Rabbi Cousens. And today we're going to be talking about how to be 100% successful on a vegan diet. And I'd like to just do a brief introduction, and I know Gabriel would like to share a couple other projects that he's working on right now, but Dr. Gabriel Cousens is an amazing physician, psychiatrist. He ran the Tree of Life in Patagonia, Arizona for decades. Was it 5 decades? Something like that.
Quite a while, 30 years.
Yes, one of the most successful diabetic programs based on, his book, There's a Cure for Diabetes. And my favorite books are Conscious Eating, which is my vegan Bible book, and A Rainbow Green Life Cuisine. Gabriel Cousens is a 4-year sun dancer and a meditator. And I just want you to take it away, Gabriel, and share what we're talking about here is healthy longevity and people saying, my body isn't really responding well to a vegan diet. And it's their excuse to going back to eating flesh. And we know that's not true. I mean, I've heard you say last time you spoke to a yoga community that I'm a part of and that you could do I think you did 1,200 consecutive push-ups that morning. So
actually it was 2,000.
It was 2,000 that morning. See, your memory is even better than mine. You gotta get some more spirulina and green juice on board. So I would like you to take it away, Gabriel.
Okay.
The other thing that I would really like to share with you is Gabriel's starting a peace meditation every Sunday. And I'm going to have the link in the bottom of the podcast and also on the YouTube channel about that. And we're going to be hopefully sponsoring Gabriel with our great membership that we have in our grandmother community. Because, it's scientifically proven, I'll let Gabriel talk about this, that when people get together and meditate together, the power of the amount of peace it creates within those cities, within those communities, and within the world is undisputable. So thank you, Gabriel. Take it away.
Okay, Tammy, thank you very much for having me. I'm a vegan grandfather, 2 children and 3 teenage granddaughters. Okay, so I like being able to talk like a vegan grandfather. But there's a few catches here. And one of the things is people think grandfather, grandmother, I'm getting old, I'm getting weak, I'm getting frail. It doesn't have to be that way. We can get stronger and more flexible with age and wiser. Okay, because people say, well, geez, if I had the body of a teenager with the wisdom I had, what a world it would be. I've heard that said a few times, right? And we can have that. So the part of it is with the diet. Now, I've been a live food vegan really for about since 1973. So we can look at that and understand that's 38 years type thing. And so I can speak to it from the direct experience. My chronological age is 80. So I can speak to it from that experience too. I'm not theorizing. Okay. So those are some of the things, and I'll just give you an idea. When I was in 6th grade, which is about 12, 11, I could do 61 push-ups. When I was captain of an undefeated Amherst College football team, I could do 70. When I was 60, I could do 601. And as Tammy mentioned, here at 80, I'm hitting 2,000. How does that happen? I'll tell you that. It doesn't happen by accident. It's an attitude that's most important. And if we look at the different research that's out there, like Ellen Langer's research, and they show that when they took people who were 30 years out of college and they started playing. They created an environment as if they were 30 years younger. They actually, in 10 days, grew younger. Literally, even their fingers got thinner, pain went away, all kinds of energy happened. So it's not just your diet or your exercise, but it's also your state of mind. That's really, really, really important. So I'm just bringing that up to the question, because the idea is to know that you can get better with age. That's what I really want people to hear. And it's true, period. So what I'd like to do, just to make the point, is do a little bit of dancing. Spiritual joy is part of this attitude that keeps you young. Okay, so we're going to dance for a few minutes. I invite you all to kind of dance with me, if you feel like doing that. And I'm going to dance. Tammy's going to put some music on. We'll dance for 3 minutes, and then we'll meditate just for a minute or two, just to kind of focus the mind. I'm just going to mention, why am I teaching meditation in the middle of this talk about, well, I'll tell you why. Because we know that people who meditate for 5 years on a regular basis have a physiology that's 15 years younger. That's a pretty big statement. 5 years physiology, 15 years younger. And so not only does movement make a difference and exercise make a difference in diet, but meditation actually can create 15 years younger after 5 years of meditation. That's a huge statement. That's a physiology that's 15 years younger. So, wow. Okay. So I've just laid out a few things. So we're going to meditate just for a little bit, just like a quiet mind, for, a minute or two. So let's try. And actually I have one correction. I actually was thinking live food person, and that's 39. I actually been a vegan for 50 years. Since we're talking about veganism, I just want to make that clear. So, and I'm going to say it works. So what makes it work? On chromosome 19, it actually says how much protein, fat, and carbohydrates we need. About 30% of the people need a lower amount of protein, and 70% need higher. Now, let me say what lower and higher means. It's still very low for a meat eater. So it's 35 grams of protein a day for a person who needs not much, and about 70 grams, double that, for a person who needs more. But that's way less than the normal meat eater has, 150 grams and so forth. So in a sense, they're both low protein. But the point is, we vary genetically. And we're not cows who just eat grass. We are different and unique in that way. Now, I'm going to say there's a few other things before we get into some of the details. It also varies with age. So when you're a little child, you're going to eat a lot more protein. And you're going to have a lot more calories because you're growing. Your brain needs support. You have to really eat for your brain. About 82% of the brain kind of grows in the first 2 years. It keeps growing until, well, at least you're 7 or 8 in a certain way maturing. And then as a teenager, you need more, more protein in your diet. And then when you're in 40s, people are eating too much protein. And so as a result, you have double the amount of cancer because people are having too much protein. But then in the 60s, you need more protein again. I'll give you, this is a personal story. This is how I actually learned it. So at the age of 65, I was doing 25 pull-ups. And it's like, I'm stuck. I can't seem to get him. And then I read about, hey, you're not paying attention. I need to increase protein. So I took 1 tablespoon of E3 Live, 1 tablespoon a day I added, and I went up to 100 pull-ups in about a month and a half. that was one shift. So one of the messages, we really need to pay attention to the details here. You really have to think about what you're doing. And that is a difference to be really successful here. The details make a difference, and you have to make adjustments, not only according to your genetics in a certain way, but also to your life cycle.
Mhm.
So at 65, I needed more protein. Not a lot more, but I needed more. So I'm always looking at, what is it your body need at a certain phase of your life, plus the amount of activity you're doing and so forth. But literally in your early 60s, you do start to need more protein. So those are kind of life cycle ways of beginning to understand it. Now,
And for me, I found the same thing when I was losing a little bit of energy. All I needed was an extra tablespoon of hemp hearts and a little bit of spirulina every day. That was the fine tweak that I had. That was my sweet spot. So when people are thinking, they're not getting enough protein, they get really pretty far out into left field thinking about that, especially the people that are eating flesh and secretions. It's a very small amount for the adjustment for better health. And any more than what you're saying is cancer promoting. Is that right?
it doubles the rate of cancer in people in their 40s. That's a pretty significant statement because they're eating too much protein, because they didn't adjust to, you're not a teenager anymore, where you need more protein. Okay. So I began to look at this whole picture to how do I make people successful on a vegan diet? Okay. And that's where I really got to this. And once you kind of know a little bit about your tendencies, and on my website, I have a 30 questions that gives you an idea whether your person needs a higher protein diet or a lower protein diet. That's one of the most important pieces here. And it's called slow and fast oxidizer. A slow oxidizer is a lower protein. Fast oxidizer is a higher protein. So people can actually get that questionnaire. It's in my books as well. But the idea is just answering 30 questions. You can sort it out. I'm just going to I'm going to just give you some of the questions just to give you a little feeling for it. So if your person has a salad and you're hungry an hour later, you're probably a fast oxidizer, probably need more protein, need more nuts and seeds or other kind of proteins in your salad. If you're like myself, I can eat a salad. I only really eat like one meal a day, but I can eat a salad. I don't need a lot of stuff in the salad, and I'm fine for the next 4 to 6 hours. Mm-hmm. Why? Because I don't need that much protein, you see. So that's a very easy way to see it, just that one question. And the next question is, when you sit down at a meal, what is on your mind? The leafy greens or the nuts and seeds or the other things that are more protein concentrated? So you're drawn to there's a tendency to what you need. So those are two just really simple ways of sorting out whether your person needs more protein or less protein. So if you can have just a salad and go 4 hours, you don't need a lot of, you're more like a slow oxidizer. And if you need, after an hour or two, you're hungry, then you're probably a person needs more protein in your meal and during the day. So it isn't really super complicated, okay? And I think that's important. I mean, Stanford Medical School kind of sorted out the gene map. Well, you don't have to have your DNA mapped. You can just see if you're hungry an hour or 4 hours later. So now that being said, okay, so we have to adjust the protein. We have to look at how much carbohydrate and fat we need. Now, along with it, and I don't want to get into too much metabolics, okay, because but along with it, it turns out that people need a higher protein, need also a higher fat diet. Now, higher fat, what does that mean? Well, it doesn't mean animal fat, which is very high in pesticides and herbicides. It really means plant-based fats, such as avocados and olives and things like that. And so generally everybody needs a certain amount of that with their diet. Now, some people, I just need like a half avocado a day. It's not a lot. Other people may have 3 avocados a day because they need more fat in their diet. So there's a certain trial and error in the process. So if your person needs more protein, it's a big hint that you actually need more fat. Okay. Now, there are other, now we get the carbohydrates, it's more complicated. Because with age, people who are eating a high amount of carbohydrates have a serious fourfold more cognitive decline. Okay, so with age, you want to eat less carbohydrates no matter what, because your cognitive decline is amplified by excess carbohydrates. So that's another piece.
Based on activity level, would you say, Gabriel, like the amount, like let's say a long distance runner or somebody that lifts a lot of weights, would that carbohydrate thing vary on that?
Yes, but also the protein varies too. But let's just say, because for myself, I'm not a long distance runner. I don't actually lift weights. I do what I've always done since a kid. I do push-ups and pull-ups and sit-ups and, very naturally based, or the rubber stretching things. So,
Yoga.
yeah, and then that's a different set though. There's yoga, there's breathing exercises, and there's, physical exercising. I do all of those, okay? And that's all the variations people need to know. There has to be stretching and then strengthening and balancing also. Particularly with age, you want to focus on balancing. If you saw me dancing, you see how I'm doing things on one foot. And that's the balancing part. And we need to hone that in a certain way to keep paying more attention to our balance with age, because there's a tendency to get a little weaker in that area if you don't practice. So, okay. So the carbohydrate, we have to be careful of having too much, because that actually lowers your cognition. The fat seems to be better for brain function in the long run. Again, we're talking about avocados, olives, and different kind of vegan type fatty foods. Now, one of the really good things about a vegan diet is by eating lower on the food chain, you're exposed to significantly less pesticides and herbicides. Animal fat contains, animal flesh, including fat, contains about 95 to 97% of the pesticides and herbicides, because it's higher up in the food chain. So it migrates up. It's still better to have organic. Okay, and we try to be as close to 100% organic as possible. So where we live, we've sorted that out. When we were at the Tree Life, we were growing our own organic food. And so it's extremely important in terms of overall function. In terms of kids, it's dramatically important. The research at a variety of places, research in Mexico, as well as at Appleton, Wisconsin, in the high schools there, kids got organic. They did an experiment. The kids getting organic vegan food at lunch had dramatic improvements in their test scores and their cognitive ability. And when they did that little bit experiment in Mexico, the same type of thing. So pesticides and herbicides are a benefit of not being as exposed when you're vegan because you're eating lower in the food chain. That's a key. But it's best to be organic no matter what. So those are some of the kind of things that need to happen. Now, the other thing is trial and error. I mentioned it's not just, oh, you need more protein or less protein. There's a spectrum. And people need to find where they are along the spectrum. And, you know, there's a small percentage, maybe 1 or 2%, who could be fruitarian. And people try to do it, they fail and say, oh, it doesn't work. No, well, it's because that doesn't fit your body type, you know. But everyone, when we apply these principles of individualizing your diet to your life cycle, to your age, and I'll explain another thing about that in a minute, okay, and to your genetics, with your fast slow oxidizer, you are able to make the adjustments to be highly successful. And that's really the point. There's no one, knowing what I know now, who cannot be a successful vegan, period.
Right.
But you got to, go ahead.
Yeah, the one thing, and also that I would love to hear you talk about is, you know, even the biochemical alterations that happen, the molecular alterations that happen in food when it's cooked. So people say, you know, I don't do well with legumes at all or any of that stuff. But, you know, if I sprout mung beans, for example, everyone seems to be fine with that in salad. But if they're reactive to lentils and stuff, they don't do well with them cooked. So how that changes for people. So one of the biggest arguments I hear from people is that they don't do well with any kind of legumes. So the alternative is sprouted pea sprouts or mung bean sprouts. So I would love if you could speak a little bit about that.
Okay, well, I do almost everything sprouted if I can because it's got more energy. Mm-hmm. Totally different reasons, okay? But food has energy, okay? And when we eat it, that energy comes into us. So when you sprout it, and I have pictures of how it looks, you see this sprout food is just a field, a really beautiful field of energy. So I do everything sprouted. Now, the advantage of sprouting too, like with legumes and even grains, is it pulls out the different digestive blockers that are in some of those. And that's why people have some trouble with beans, because they have things that block digestion. That gets pulled out when you're soaking and sprouting. So that's an easy solution to that. You also don't have to cook them. You're getting it at full energy. But the key is you're pulling out the digestive blockers that are in them. Mm-hmm. So just soaking them overnight and sprouting them a little bit, and that takes care of that issue. Mm-hmm. So it's a pretty simple thing. A lot of these things are simple in that way. And it's just people have to be willing to kind of, stretch a little bit, to think a little bit about what they're doing to make it work. But the benefits are, you're healthier, you're, as I say, more flexible, you're stronger, your mind is working better. Everything works better and can get better with age. And that's the beautiful part of it. Now, there is another system called the Ayurvedic system. And I use that. I have a diplomat of Ayurveda, and so I use that as well. Now, what does that mean? Everybody has a different constitution. In Ayurveda, there's 9 different constitutions. But just to make life easier, because we want to make it easier, there's Kapha, there's Pitta, and there's Vata. Kapha is like the elephant. You're big, bulky, you tend to gain weight easily. You hold water, okay? Babies, with all their mucus, they're very Kapha. And kapha people do really worse with dairy. So giving kids dairy aggravates, and they get the earaches and the runny nose and so forth, and like that. Now, the pitta time of life is when you go into puberty. So you have the fiery teenager and the sexual energies and things like that. And that is the pitta energy. And then with age, we have vata. So the pitta is like the tiger, and vata is like the thin goat. Okay. So you have to eat to balance that. Now, it used to be people became more vata in their 60s. But as the general health has deteriorated, people are getting vata in their late 40s. Okay. So vata is the main thing, after 40 that you want to be concerned about. You want to eat in a way to balance vata. So what balances vata? Oily foods help balance vata. Oil, if you're cold and dry, that's a vata. Okay, skin gets dry, you lose muscle mass, people get cold, a little bit colder with age, So we want to do warming, oily foods, okay? And those help balance the vata tendencies that you have with age. So we put oil on our skin, we eat more oily foods. That's different than when you're in your kapha phase as a child. That isn't as good for you. So we have to understand the lifestyles. Now, kapha, pitta, vata are, it really works that you're a kapha, pitta, or you're a vata, kapha. They're different combinations. There's all three. But I'm making the point that with age, everyone faces the vata forces. And as a teenager, everyone feels that tiger, pitta, sexual energy, all those forces. So they're age-related forces, and we have to eat in a way to balance that.
So when you say quite a few friends of mine and people involved in our communities are whole food plant-based, so they don't add any added oil onto their food. But what you're saying is maybe at that stage and maybe if you're a vata and you're going into the vata stage, you might need a bit more avocado or a bit more seed.
Yeah,
Right.
that's what I'm saying. And avocados and oils and nuts and seeds. Right. So that's the point. You're going to have more fat in your diet. But also, people tend to get dried out as a vata. And so it's very good to put oil on your skin. And that is balancing your whole system. So it's good to do that every day, if not twice a day, depending on your condition. So we eat and kind of live in a way that balances that part of ourselves then. And so we have to include that. To me, the healthy longevity includes that part of it. So I think those are like some of the bigger, strokes, so to speak, in looking at that. So do you have any questions before I go a little further?
Thank you. No, I'm ready. My only question was just to clarify, because when people don't use added oil on their food, that it might be a little bit on your skin, and which I do every day, which is very hydrating for me. And more oil or more oily food doesn't necessarily mean a lot of oily food. For one person, it could be you add an extra tablespoon of hemp hearts in your diet, it kind of thing, right?
Right. No, I mentioned like just 1 tablespoon of E3 Live, and I went from 25 to 100 pull-ups.
Mhm.
It's not big jumps. We're talking small adjustments. And then we trial and error, we observe it. So you have to be your own little scientist exploring, what really works for you at what, according to your constitution, high protein, low protein, kapha, pitta, vata, and your life cycle. We're always having to adjust all these things, so you're just right on the mark. And so it means you have to be a lot more conscious in how you run your life and your diet.
And this is where the meditation comes in, where we become more mindful of what we're choosing. And you often talk, a couple things that you say quite often is, food is our love note from God. And the number one thing to heal is self-love. It's like on the top of your list. And so when we are loving ourselves deeply, we are paying attention because we're meditating, and we have a physical practice in our life, a physical practice that keeps us fit as we age and strong. And so we notice those little things, and we notice the difference when we tweak them. Otherwise, if we're just kind of haphazardly eating, we don't. So it's kind of that call for mindfulness, and more mindfulness as we get older,
Right. And we're supposed to get a little wiser with age, right? That's part of the program. I want to go back to a little bit the diet: sweet, sour, and salty. Salt is something a kapha makes them retain fluid. Okay, so they can get overhydrated. You mentioned something about you put things in on your skin to keep you hydrated. So salt, I'll explain the different kinds of salt, we need to increase that with the more vata we get, because salt balances vata. Because vata is drying out, salt helps you retain fluid. Now, table salt is really not the salt I'm talking about. We're talking about sea salt. We're talking about what I use is scalar salt, which is 82 minerals. It's been activated because salt is a crystal.
Some people love the celery juice. A lot of people love it. It's so high in balanced minerals and salt.
Yeah, but the point is, we're going to have more salt with age. And that is needed to balance the continual kind of movement towards vata. That's the point I'm making. So, whereas, when you're coffee, you don't want that much salt. Not so good. Salt aggravates pitta, teenager, but it balances vata. So we're going to add more salt to our food. The best is to get salt with the 82 minerals. The best, since the oceans are pretty contaminated, is to get salt that's mined, like Himalayan salt. Or we have the scalar wave salt that is mined from 5 different places. And so it has a mix of the different energies of the locations. So those are an important thing. The reason I mention it is that we're programmed not to have salt. Oh, salt's bad for you. It's, but no, you need it. And with age, you need more of it.
The right kind.
Yeah, the right kind, not sodium chloride. That's not really salt. Mm-hmm. And so just kind of keeping that in mind. I stay away from the sea salt also because the oceans are contaminated, so, and a little bit of sweet is kind of a balancing. Now, when I say sweet, we're talking, a little bit of fruit, a little bit of, things that taste sweet. I'm not promoting glucose and fructose because they actually decrease your brain function. And fructose is literally 5 times worse for your brain function than glucose. So the brain fuels do require glucose, but it's better from your complex carbohydrates, so it slowly goes into your system. So those are other real considerations, the oil on your skin, the sweet, salt, and sour also tasting food. So those are kind of, again, considerations that everybody has to balance that. Because I have some kapha qualities, been a little resistant to salt, but I realized, wait, I really need to do this because, at 80 there, there's more of a tendency to be more vata. So you want to do counter vata things. You want to keep hydrated. You want to drink more fluid. Whereas kaphas, when they're younger, they can't drink too much because they overhydrate. Whereas vatas need more fluid. So you move from kaphas having 6 glasses a day to vata with 8 or 10 or 12 glasses of some kind of fluid a day, because you're adjusting. You're always adjusting. That's the key to our diet. There's no set idea to the diet. You're always adjusting. That keeps you kind of flexible in that way. Always thinking about what you're doing. The other thing is quantities of food. As a hungry teenager, as a growing teenager, you need a lot more food, right? But again, with age, your metabolism changes a little bit. You don't really need as much. So I really just I don't have dinner. I just have mostly a salad with maybe a little bit of something at lunch. And that's it. And I have in the morning just some things like a little cacao and little ginger and things like that. So, so we want to decrease the amount of food we eat because it is a metabolic strain on us. Because we don't need it. And eating at night strains us, whereas if you eat midday, that's the pitta time of the day, which is a more active time for digestion. So I basically have I'll eat around 2 o'clock, most, 1 to 2. And that's it. Well, I couldn't really do that when I was 30. I did actually need to eat. No, I didn't have the consciousness either, but I'm advising people to seriously consider eating much, much less food in general, but also really not having dinner. Liquids, soups, cold soups, things like that. So that's another consideration in the story. Any questions about that?
No, it's really important to eat like when the sun is high. Yeah. When the digestion is working. And I think people have a tendency to eat at night as a way of soothing themselves, but we can do that through yoga and, bathing.
And meditation, yeah.
Absolutely. Well,
go ahead.
Anything else, Gabriel, before we wrap up the podcast today?
Well, I'm just kind of summarizing a little bit. We're saying we are different constitutional types. Our DNA is different. And our diet is really laid out in chromosome 19. So you're not making it up saying a person needs more protein or less. So people argue about it. No, you're this way and that's your constitution, you're that way. So we can't try to copy other people. So we have a unique constitution. In addition, our diet changes with the seasons of our life and also the 4 seasons. So in the summer, you don't eat really hot foods, you eat cooling foods, that kind of thing. And then it changes with the seasons of our life, as I explained, kapha, and then more pitta, and then more vata with age. So when we kind of put those together, high protein, low protein, the changes, the sweet salt, the needing to balance more vata with age, it begins to empower us to be kind of more optimal with it. And seeing it as a love note from God, it's a blessing that we have food that we can eat.
Right.
And remember, you can't eat your way to God. Little detail. But but we want to come to peace with it. See, a lot of people are not at peace with their diet.
Mm.
They're struggling all the time. This is just part of what you need to do to have high level functioning. And just get that it's always changing. So may everybody be blessed that we kind of can understand that we're not a bunch of cows and we are unique individuals and we have to work out a unique diet for ourselves, within the parameters we just talked about. So I bless everybody that you are able to take advantage of this advice and this scientific understanding. And I thank you for having me on this podcast.
Thank you very much, Gabriel. And we will be doing this again sometime soon. Yes. And there will be in the link a link for you to join the meditations with Gabriel and also his website. And thank you everyone for joining.
So the meditations are free. It is about healing the world and shifting the consciousness of the world. So as grandfathers and grandmothers, that's part of the gift we're giving to the world, is the wisdom and helping people upgrade their consciousness. So it's almost, I'm going to say almost a dharmic type of relationship that, we're changing the planet. We're waking up the planet. Maybe we weren't so awake before, but now we have an opportunity. So this meditation, weekly meditation, Sunday nights at 6:00 Israel time, but this one we're going to do at 5:30, just one at 5:30, is our way of elevating the global mind. And the research is very heavy, very strong, that shows that we can do it. So it's good. We can even affect the sunspots on the sun. That research is that when people are meditating, the sunspots on the sun decrease. More sunspots are connected to more social disorder. So it's all kind of really interesting, but we can do it. And it's us grandparents who can really make a difference. Because there's not a lot of wisdom coming from too many other places that the grandparents have by our own life experience. So please come to the World Peace Meditation, and we are waking up and changing the world.
Yeah. Thank you. On that note, we will see you again soon.
May everybody be blessed, and may you be blessed for your good work.
Thank you.